As it turns out, my Noctua tube is pretty much empty. If you have a desktop computer and it's old or it's been used really hard, this is something that you probably overlook and that really needs to be changed out. Either because you have one that you use for gaming or processing all the time and it's been a year or two and you just use the ever-living hell out of it, or it's a 10, 12, 15-year-old computer and it just, you know, has been a while. This heatsink right here, give me that. Doesn't want to come out, but this heatsink is hiding this thermal paste right here, or thermal interface material, whatever you like to call it. This stuff right here is the source of all your problems. So look at how it's flaking off of that heatsink. See how it just sort of separated, and it's really hard. Like if you were to poke at it, this stuff, it doesn't really want to come up. Like, see my finger there? That finger that is in the shadows, because why not? That finger doesn't have any of the goo on it because the goo is thoroughly baked. Also, this particular goo is kind of white looking, so it's not so great. But you need to remove this. Now, the proper way to remove this, at least in my experience, is to get a high quality paper towel. Come on, give me high quality paper towel. I'll even take a medium one. Whatever. Paper towel. This is a Bounty brand in the United States. They just happen to give you good stuff for your money. Something that won't shred. These paper towels, you can get them wet and they won't disintegrate. But use a paper towel to wipe that whole thing off. Get you some focus there. Wipe. See how hard it is to get off? Look at that. Look. It does not, no matter how hard I push, this stuff does not want to come off. It's very hard to get off. So, yeah, that ain't happening one-handed. Anyway, the thermal paste is overlooked a lot, and this is the example of why you really need to change it. Once it's baked on like this, yeah, I'm going to scrape this off, and I'll see you after the cut. Alright, I did a lens switch to make it easier for you guys to see, and here you go. So this processor right here, notice I got all the goop off the top. This bit doesn't matter, and while I'm in here, I'm going to go ahead and reseat the chip. Just lift this up, figure out which side of this I can lift. There we go. Really, you don't even have to lift it. If you just move it around a little bit, put it back down, and lock it back down. Reseating the processor makes sure that any bad contact between the CPU and its pins won't actually be an issue. Now, scraping that stuff off was actually way harder than I thought it would be. I had to repeatedly fold the towel over, push very hard, and rub back and forth aggressively. But it's good. Now you may notice that I have not cleaned the square area off, but that's because that would just overflow anyway, so I don't really care. Anyway, what do we put in place of that? Well, I have a couple options over here in this handy drawer, and you see I already have one out in my hand. But these are the two thermal pastes that I generally use. This is a classic, this is not. So, the classic, Arctic Silver 5. It's made by Arctic Silver. This stuff is great. I've used this stuff for 20 years. It theoretically has cure time, but you don't really have to wait. And this is a newer choice that I've also gotten great service out of. This is Noctua NT-H1 thermal paste. Now you notice I also buy pretty large tubes of this stuff. If you bought a tube, it would be much smaller. Anyway, with this thermal paste, let's get this stuff out of my way. Basically, I don't have a tripod right here right now, but I'll apply it and get right back to you. As it turns out, my Noctua tube is pretty much empty. So, yeah, the generally accepted way to apply this stuff is to put a big old pea size, like, you know, the vegetable, but I don't have quite enough, so I smacked what I could off the end of this tube. I don't think I have any more Noctua, but I'll check. But we'll go ahead and let me show you how I apply the paste. So you need to figure out whether or not it's going to cover everything evenly. Now, there are people who have ways of doing this where they take like a razor blade and they spread it real thin and so on and so forth. And I don't like to do all that nonsense. I think that people who do that, they're just sniffing their own farts. So we're not fart sniffers here. So let's get those lined up. Now you'll notice, by the way, the backing plate on this, there's a backing plate. If I don't know if I can get you a macro shot in there or not, but do you see how the actual metal sockets down there are moving with the heatsink? Yeah, this Dell is a rare one that has a standard design, which means it has a standard backing plate and not permanently fixed screw hole things that go down to the metal plate below. Anyway, you put this down, you just crank it down and back up. I'll do that and we'll cut here. So I've got it screwed down a bit, which lines it up. Push down, wiggle back and forth like this, and it'll distribute that P from the center toward the sides without squeezing too hard. And now we're going to take it off and see how that distribution has gone and where we need to add more. This is actually a fairly good result. If you look closely here, you can see that it's pretty thoroughly spread out. If you look at the CPU, you can see that there's some excess in one corner and there's a couple corners that are a little lacking. So what we're going to do is, since we set it down this way, we will take it and we will reverse it and set it down the other way, because this is the kind of heatsink you can do that with. Get the pegs lined up, give it another little push and squish, if you will. And what do we got? It thinned out a bit right there, so we do need to probably add just a little bit more. I don't normally do this, but I think what we're going to have to do is, since the Noctua here is completely and totally empty, we are probably going to have to fall back on Arctic Silver 5, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's not a big deal to mix and match these heatsink pastes. It's not like they're going to make each other not work. So I'll add some of that and we'll see what happens. This is the coverage after adding Arctic Silver 5, and we're going to take the heatsink and put it on the processor. Give it a little squish. And yeah, that's pretty complete. So we'll go ahead and crank it down, and that should keep it cool for another 10 years, assuming the hardware even lasts that long, because, you know, at some point things fail just because of overuse. But this will get a few more years of life out of it minimum, if you ask me. By the way, here's a critical final step. Once you've got the heatsink secured, don't forget to plug the heatsink back in. If you do not plug this in, you will have a bad time. Lots of complaining, fan won't be spinning, computer will overheat, I promise you. One additional issue came up. After I put everything back together, this fan just kept running at high speed, and the computer did not boot. It didn't do anything. So one thing I left out is you do need to probably reseat these memory sticks as well. You know, just push these little things down until they eject and then immediately push them back in. But you may need to reseat the RAM as well. That's another common failure mode. I've had memory sticks actually lose their connectivity even though they're physically installed in transport. So this is a common problem. Be sure to reseat those while you're in here doing all this CPU stuff. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt to reseat these power connectors here and here either. Just a couple things that may come up that may think you may think, oh, I wrecked my computer, but really it's just that the contact on these, on the little pins down in the socket here, the contact goes bad over time. And eventually, you know, you goofing off with stuff may be the thing that pushes it over the edge. And I'm almost done setting up my PC. I'm never doing this. If you ever get this crap, hit this and then go into the notification settings and turn off all the stupid notifications.